Hello, it's 3:17 on April 9th, and some of you are working well ahead, and that's great. That's going to, I know I said I wasn't going to do another chapter or two until after the break, but some of you are working ahead, so I want to be sure I'm meeting everybody's learning needs here. So I'm going to move into chapter 6 of Animal Farm. And so let's get going here. And we have chapter 6. And it's a redefinition of freedom, trade with the enemy, amendments of commandments, scapegoating. And this is part 2 of the climax. Chapter 5 was part 1, and chapter 6 is part 2. So the animals work harder in the new society. 60-hour work weeks are introduced. And in our society, it's 40 hours is normal. So take that into consideration when you're looking at how much work these animals are putting in compared to maybe what the pigs are putting into. Volunteer labor is offered on Sundays, but a stipulation is that anyone who does not volunteer will have their food rations cut. So that begs the question, well, I want to take Sunday off, but I also want to have something to eat on that day as well. So I guess we're going to have to work on Sundays now, even though we do have that opportunity to take it off. So is that freedom? Are they really giving the animals a choice of which way to go, or is it this way or the highway type thing? The building of the windmill prevents other work to be completed, and Clover warns Boxer not to overdo things. So this is foreshadowing. Pay very close attention to how much harder Boxer is working, and especially remember his maxims: I will work harder, and Napoleon is always right. Boxer keeps the momentum of the windmill alive with his hard work for the cause. The animals discover that there are some items that they need that is required outside the farm, so Napoleon announces that they would begin trade with the humans. Now, very similar to the Soviet-Nazi non-aggression pact. And so if you recall in History 20, it was the plan the Nazis would sign a deal with the Soviets, and in turn both sides would not go after each other during World War II. And then, so that meant that the Nazis wouldn't be fighting a battle on two fronts. But the Nazis reneged on the pact and eventually started to invade Soviet Union. And as a result, the Soviet Union was brought into the war and on the Allies side. And that turned the tide for World War II. So pay very close attention to how the relations between animals and humans go now. Are they going to work together on this, or are they going to stab each other in the back, so to speak? Okay. We have the next slide. Some animals protest, but their protests are shot down as Squealer states. No rules to not work with humans were not written down. And such a ban was another example of Snowball's lies. So creates doubt in the animal's credibility. So because it wasn't written down, we can make these changes. You know, how many of these animals can actually read? This is a big thing. And if you remember the 7 commandments, they were shrunk down into 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. So if you keep saying that over and over again, how many of you are going to remember what the 7 commandments are? And I bet all of us would not remember all 7 commandments unless we actually turn to page 15, I believe, or was it page 7? Let me just do a quick one here. Page 15. I was right the first time. So be sure that you understand what's been written down, very similar to contracts. If you're writing contracts, read the fine print. I know they're a pain in the neck, but know that you know what you're signing and or what you're agreeing to. That way, if anybody says otherwise or to the contrary, you say, hey, we got it here. Okay, so the humans are willing to trade through an agent. So that's a middleman or a middle person. They respect the efficiency of the farm, but hate the concept of animals running things. The pigs move into the farmhouse, which was originally banned by Snowball in the beginning. Remember, it was going to be a museum, and nothing would be touched. Well, they were hauling stuff out, the pigs, out of the house anyway, so they were already breaking that rule or commitment that they would not touch anything of humans or use anything of humans, but now they are slowly becoming like humans. Okay. Then we have everything that Snowball and Old Major initiated and intended for animalism is now being undone and becoming skewed. So remember, I talked about on the surface, everything looks like it's perfect. It's exactly what we were intending animalism to be, but then you dig a little deeper and then we have something else. Okay, so always there's different layers of what animalism is, how it's perceived, how it's enacted by the pigs and even the animals as well. Squealer explains the necessity for the smarter animals to maintain their dignity. The commandments are altered one word at a time to suit the entrance of the pigs. So the first commandment is amended. First signs that a new regime is in place. Lack of education allows these changes to go generally unnoticed. So if you make a subtle change, even if it's a word or a phrase, and governments have done this, they've reworded or rephrased things so it suits their agenda, and then we find out that it means something totally different. So, and you can do that with even grammar. When you text somebody, if you do not use the correct punctuation, it could be interpreted as something else. So if you type in caps, all caps, it may seem like you're yelling at the person. And then if you question that person, you're saying, I'm not yelling at you. Well, you capped off everything. Or if you don't put any punctuation in, then maybe they might be in a bad mood or something. So it's very important that punctuation is incorporated so that the full meaning of that statement is understood by the receiver. This is not happening on Animal Farm. The third slide, the windmill is half complete now, is destroyed by a storm, and Napoleon blames Snowball. Remember, Snowball's being used as a scapegoat. So anything that happens on the farm that probably was some mistake by the pigs, or in this case it was a weather anomaly, the animals don't know that. So, and of course they're scared during the storm. Once they hear Snowball's causing all this damage, who are they going to turn to? They're going to turn to the pigs, and they give the pigs more power and more authority over the farm and over the rights of the other animals. So does that sound familiar? We've seen that happen in various parts of the world in the last 5 to 10 years. So they blame Snowball for this, and they say that he's plotting the destruction of animalism, of the animals, and announces that the animals will work through the winter to rebuild the windmill. Now keep in mind, they're not getting a lot of food, they're not getting a lot of resources, so how many of them are going to survive this winter? Proof that it's Snowball? Well, Napoleon says, hey, I saw his footprints all over the place. Okay, this is a farm, and there are a lot of pigs on the farm, and they're all over the place. So to isolate that one set of those hooves that are in the ground is Snowball. It really comes down to, light bulb. Is it really Snowball? And if you're not uneducated, you're not asking the questions, or you take things as is, as face value, without doing some research or background checks or information, you're going to say, yeah, that's Snowball. Obviously, it has to be Snowball. It's nobody, no other pig on the farm. So it really comes down to perception versus reality. And with the stereotype PowerPoint assignment that we did, and those of you that are still doing it, look at the perception versus the reality. How are stereotypes perceived, and what is the actual reality of those stereotypes? So the same thing's being applied here in this novel. What is being perceived by the animals, by the humans, by the pigs, and what is really the reality of the events and an actual situation of what's occurring in Animal Farm. All right, so that's chapter 6. And stay tuned for chapter 7.